And we are live. Hey, everyone. I hope you are having a great St. Patrick's Day. You are likely going through what my family is going through as we are navigating how to work from home and our kids are home and how to work from home with our kids home. And I know this is new for many of you. I know the anxiety level is high for many of you, and it's anxiety's high for my family as well as we navigate how to navigate through this season over the next few weeks or a couple of months. We have no idea how long this is going to take, but I wanted to just help in any way I can over the last week, and I continue to help a lot of ministries use social media and live streaming, and want to continue to help in that area. But one of the things I've gotten a lot of questions about is video conferencing, and so for the last 8 years, I have been working remotely and doing a lot of video conferencing. And so I've used a lot of tools from Skype to Zoom to Google Hangouts to WebEx, and wanted to share some of the things I've learned when it comes to technology. And I want to talk more about best practices, but Zoom is really the best. I've never found a tool better. I've tried a lot of different tools. I use a lot of different tools. But there's really nothing better than Zoom. The functionality, it works great on a lot of different devices. It's easy for people to use for the most part, and it works when you have lower bandwidth, better than other platforms. So I highly recommend Zoom as a technology, and they've really become the industry leader in that space. But I want to talk about how some best practices you can use to better video conference. And really what I'm going to do is share some of my mistakes I've made through the years of video conferencing and how you can get better quickly as you're navigating this. And so one of the things I want to encourage you to do, if you're working remotely, that set your hours, get a clock and say, you know what, I'm going to start at 8 a.m. I'm going to start at 9 a.m. and I'm going to be dressed. I'm going to be ready to go. Even if I don't have any meetings this morning, being physically ready is a great way to turn on. A lot of people just want to roll out of bed and get to their computer and they're just working. And I think there's just something about being prepared, being on time, and then have a stop time too. And say, this is when I'm going to stop working, because when you're working from home, sometimes you could just never stop working. And I like many of you, I check my email at night and different things, but I think having a clear start and stop time is important. But this one is not about remote working as a whole. We're talking about video conferencing. Any questions you might have, I want to answer those right now. And I'm going to turn on the comments so I can see any comments that come on. So if you have any questions about video conferencing, let me know, and I will try to respond to those on the various platforms. But the first thing that makes for good video conferencing and you want to do is to be on time. And by being on time, I mean be a couple minutes early. So many people are just lackadaisical because it's online and it's, let me just pop in later. Don't be late. Get there early and be ready. Have your camera checked. Have your microphone checked. Make sure it's working. Don't wait till the last minute to get on and then get on late and then not have everything ready to go. Be there early, be on time. And just like any other meeting, don't treat video conferencing as a secondary meeting. If you have scheduled a meeting in video conferencing, get there on time and make it a priority. The second thing I want to encourage you about is to be intentional about your appearance. Think about what you're wearing. Think about having your hair done. Now, that's not something I have to worry about, but don't get on and dress a certain way for a meeting face to face and then dress differently for video conferencing. Be professional in the way your appearance looks in that meeting. That communicates a lot when you're maybe don't have your hair brushed, or you're wearing a t-shirt when you normally are wearing a tie. That communicates that this meeting is not as important to you. So be thoughtful about your appearance, and then connected to that is have a professional background. So part of your appearance is what's behind you. And so you might be working from your kitchen table, or some people I'll even be on video conferencing and they're in their bedroom and it's just kind of awkward. And so honestly, for me now and where I video conference, my home office is set up in my kid's bedroom, but people don't know that because I set up this photography background behind me. And so when I'm in a video conference, I'm, all they can see is this white background. And what it does is it removes the distractions behind me, and it really allows for focus on the meeting. And so you don't necessarily need to have a photography backdrop behind you, but be thoughtful to maybe have a black wall or some photographs behind you. But don't let your background be distracting, and definitely don't have a mess behind you in a professional setting, in a video conference meeting. Um, and uh, and so and then moving to the next point here is have a good microphone and webcam. Have a good microphone and webcam. Typically, laptops don't have great microphones and webcams. One of the things you can quickly do is if you have AirPods make great microphones and headphones. And so just using AirPods will go a long way, or even, the headphones that will come that have a microphone built in. What I use, if you want to kind of take it to another level, and because I do this so much, is I use this Blue Yeti microphone. And so you can use a USB microphone. Here's a microphone I highly recommend. This is $20 on Amazon. It's a FIFINE. And it has this little tripod thing on it, and you can set it up, and then it plugs right in USB into your computer. Will give you great audio. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get good audio. And then my camera that I'm using right now, that I use for all my video conferencing, is a Logitech 920. And I think that's about $50 on Amazon. And so it's a great tool to monitor and to watch, or to be able to engage with video conferencing in a professional way. So having a good camera and a good microphone are going to really help those meetings. And what you want to do is take away distractions. So you don't want to have a microphone that's popping or people having to barely hear you. You want to make sure they can hear you well, that they can see you well, and it's as if you're meeting face to face. So let's make video conferencing a powerful tool, and not like, oh man, I guess it's good because we have to use this. And I want to reemphasize this. I think when you can turn your camera on as much as possible, a lot of people just don't want to turn their camera on because they don't want to take care of their appearance. And I think being thoughtful about being able to see each other, half of communication, if not more, is visual in nature. And so being able to see how people are responding to what you're saying. And it just goes a long way in communication, especially professionally. So I strongly recommend video conferencing in pretty much any meeting that you have, especially as you're working remotely. And then let's move into, let's see, the next point here is video conferencing tips. Make sure you're well lit. And so right now, you can see me. I actually have two lights that I set up. The best lighting you can use for video conferencing is the sun. And so if you could be facing a window, a lot of times that helps. You can see actually right now I'm having a little bit of a shadow, if you can see that behind me. And so I use, and I'll actually turn my camera around. I use these little LED lights that are on a stand, and they cost about $100 on Amazon. I'm not recommending that you go spend $100 on lighting, but these LED panels do a great job of lighting. They don't heat up, and so you can get some small LED lights or even just a lamp and just have that in front of you to make sure you're well lit in that video conferencing. A lot of times people just look like they're in a shadow. You want it to look like you're in a meeting room together meeting, and that they can see you well, that they can hear you well. And a lighting is one of the most important things when it comes to being able to see well. The other tip I want to give you is to use the mute button. Use the mute button. Mute button is your friend. I still have nightmares about one of the early meetings that I was in, one of the most important meetings I was ever in. I was so nervous, and I was at home in the meeting, and I'd really prioritized, getting things set up for the meeting, and was there on time. And my 3-year-old at the time was having a meltdown in the other room, and we were living in Brooklyn, and our walls were paper thin, and my wife was doing everything she could. She knew how important that meeting was, but sometimes you can't control that. But what I could control was the mute button. But unfortunately, I was kind of new to video conferencing at the time, and I didn't even think to the mute button. And somebody in the meeting was like, "Dude, can you mute your microphone?" And it was painful to me to even have to be reminded from that, because I knew I was distracting from that meeting where everyone else was in the room, but they were looking to hear from me and me to speak into things. And I was such a distraction because I didn't effectively use the mute button. So make sure you use the mute button. If you're not talking and you're in a meeting, you don't know it. And I'm here in New York City. We have sirens all the time. And so I need to use that mute button. And you don't know, sometimes you're focused in on the meeting. And the truth is, even in that meeting I was in with my kid that was having a meltdown, I was tuned into the meeting. I wasn't thinking about the meltdown, but be thoughtful about both your background visually and your background audibly, because you don't want to be a distraction from the meeting. And then the other thing is maximize screen sharing. One of the great aspects of video conferencing is that you can very easily share your screen. And so maybe you're sharing your screen just to run through the notes, or look at a document together, or look at a website, or show an example, or even watch a video together. Screen sharing is one of the great tools of video conferencing. So using that tool, and then also using the chat. Zoom and most video conferencing platforms have a chat wall. And so there's some messages you can send, or even post a link to something that's mentioned in the chat. So there can be dual communication happening, which is actually advantageous of video conferencing that you can't necessarily do in a physical conference room. So while people are talking, you can share that link, or you can share maybe your thoughts to add to the conversation that you don't need to vocalize, but you can share through that, or even kind of doing polls or asking what people think. They can vote in the chat. There's a lot of uses for the screen sharing and chat functionality. So make sure you maximize that. And then the last thing I want to mention is don't multitask. If you're going to be in a meeting, be focused in that meeting. So really dig in and say, I'm going to be here in this meeting. I'm going to be present. I'm going to look. You can see in a meeting where somebody's just on their phone the whole time. It's just like, and they're in a classroom. You're not faking it in a video conferencing either, or they're just looking over to their secondary monitor, working the whole time rather than paying attention to the meeting that they're on. So keep your eyes focused in on the meeting, be engaged, be a part of the meeting, use your mute button. Any other thoughts? So I'm getting a few different comments coming in here. Bob Beal is one of my consulting heroes here on LinkedIn, asking who do you work with? Bob, I work with a lot of different entities. I primarily work with Dunham & Company, and Dunham & Company serves Christian ministries around fundraising and marketing. So that is our primary consulting clients. And then I do a lot of different things around social media and digital marketing. Aaron and Brian, thanks for joining. Thanks for your comments and all the different opportunities for Zoom. Right now, a lot of churches are using video conferencing for small groups. And so as churches aren't able to have, face-to-face small groups, Zoom is a great resource for online Bible studies and small groups. So that's a great tool, Brian. Thanks for that comment and message there. So I highly recommend Zoom. I highly recommend prioritizing how you use Zoom and getting better at video conferencing, because this is a tool that you're going to use beyond the next 8 weeks. And I think as you get used to it over the next 8 weeks, you're going to see the value that it can bring to you professionally and in communication. And so I love video conferencing. I hope you lean in the next couple of weeks, and I hope this was helpful to you professionally. Thanks so much for watching.